a novel written by Karl Heiss. The Devil is Not to Blame, Forgotten Sly Men. Chapter 14, The Visitors. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. John Donne. The presbytery was at some stone's throw to the parish church buildings. The main architectural achievement was the church of San Carlo Borromeo. Some people were on their way to change the quietness of the not-so-quiet people of Jesuit. It was about some period between the time of coffee break and the 11th hour. Earlier on, a trekker came in and encamped not far from the parish church. He unmistakably stumbles on Joseph Sandoval Darty, the boy of Reverend J.H.S.J., who ushered him to the parish priest. More than an hour later, a car arrived in the rural area under the guardianship of the venerable priest, turned a living ancestor. The man on the driver's seat was no other than Joe Parkson, the link to Joseph Sandoval Darty. The arrival of this four-wheel driving engine immediately sparked the keen interest of the villagers. And that it was driven by a youthful fellow, they were flabbergasted. A person was deemed lucky if he had a bike. The visit was in the period after the harvest. Many mountainous inhabitants were present, for they were through with harvest assignments. These villagers were busy staring at the newcomers as if they were people dropped directly from the moon. The ladies were the main attraction, dressed like Queen Mary. Some young passengers were boarding the car, a lovely Land Cruiser, a real Pathfinder. These were his two lovely and enamored sisters, accompanied by the witty John Moore, Sr. with his youngish and prankish face. Obviously the people in the convoy came to visit Joseph Darty and his native peoples. The visit was different from that made by the pregnant Mary to her cousin Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist. Mary was carrying Jesus, Son of God, and thus this could be termed as the visitation of God. There are many ways for God to visit his people. An inquisitive look in what was going in the mind of the four visitors was touching. Each of them had his design or own agenda for coming from that far. Joe Parkson had come to see his brother, to escape from the busy and noisy life of the city and to see different country fields. His two sisters, unknown to each other, wanted to see the subject of the forbidden love. How will they satisfy the wish of their heart's desire? The accelerated throbbing noise of the hearts of the two sisters was not normal. The sight of Joseph Darty was the reason. The human mind could hardly grasp this phenomenon. The record of the heartbeats would have been alarming, for it was unusually high. Each of them was excited to see again the angel of the Lord. John Moore was there as an enthusiastic observer of each of the characters in this singular living visitation play. A synoptic scrutiny at what was going in the hearts of the loving sisters could give a vivid insight of their level of madness. This is assessed only with due regard to the Gospel's 10 virgins in attendance. John Moore, Sr. had his camera like a paparazzi awaiting the foreseeable hoped arrival of the head of the camera. The young ladies, whose dress made great envy, had their fashionable handbags and small umbrellas, not to talk of their flowered stylish handkerchief. As soon as Joseph Darty appeared, the ladies jumped at his neck, almost to making him breathless. Their brother had to intervene to save his friend from the killing arms. With great difficulty did he manage to release the prisoner, helped by his hilarious junior brother. In no time, the place was full of people. Most children were half naked. Some seemed to have not kissed water for some days. Children were properly and entirely dressed up only for the great occasions. Young fascinated men and amazed ladies, with all eyes out with bewilderment at the apparitions, were greedily staring at the strangers. Compared to the villager counterparts, the city people were dressed like they were about to celebrate the Jewish feast of Passover. The ladies in their radiant youthfulness were cleanly dressed and scented. They were some kind of curiosity in this area where people struggled daily for their living. The shoes, the sunglasses and the camera from John Moore were just a source of magical confusion. The simple dress of Joseph Darty was the buffer between the visitors' flamboyant outfits and his people in tattered regalia. They called their dress, "Please Father, my brother Joe Parkson, his sisters and his young brother." What was that strange apparatus with an eye which dashes out rays of flashing light from time to time? Some people were wondering. A rural belief posited that the camera could stifle out the soul of the photographed. It was a scary devil for the rural inhabitants. Many resented being taken in picture. Few found it amusing to be photographed, though children were ecstatic. Here was a man of the wealthy stock standing in front of his fellow companion who had less material affluence from nature or life. What was their common ground? Both were well disposed to answer the call of the Master to work in his vineyard. They wished to become the laborers of the Lord, fishers of men and women. Ahead of them a man was already working in that very vineyard. That was no other than Reverend J.H. S.J. Hardly seen without his cowboy hat, he still had his regular daily coffee, though he stopped all beer many years ago. He is fond of playing his harp if not meditating on the mystery of the cross. In his storehouse you could get some available fresh beer and soft drinks. These are offered to his esteemed guests or visitors. And so far all were his esteemed guests and visitors. Not all could be as ascetic as him, this he well understood. Scarcely did the priest eat meat while he enjoyed frugal meals and mushrooms dishes. He might be one of those rare Irishmen at the distress of the rest who do not guzzle mugs of foaming fresh beer or did not swallow gallons of Guinness. His parishioners did not eat meat often. Meat was a costly luxury in families of 10 people, sometimes even more. Children dropped like heavenly showers. Life was tough for the mountainous settlers. He saw no reason as their leader not to emulate them. He lived with them their life of simplicity without being simplistic. Life is simple but not simplistic. This is the big difference. What makes life difficult is greed. People have not finished what they had in their own plate that they are already eyeing what is in their neighbor's side or in front of him, if not openly coveting what is in his plate. Greed, simple greed coupled with stupidity, that is the difficulty of life. For this most unfortunate greedy lot keep what belongs to others, not excluding the Caesars unto themselves, and are much prone to give to Caesar what belongs to God. As this is not enough, they are the more reluctant to give any praise to God. He taught them all. He was all happy to welcome his long-awaited visitors, but for many confreres who had a sharp tooth and an easy mouth, stopping by Gzutl was not always an easy decision to make. They rather prefer a place where they taste fully the delights of the belly kingdom. They went to the grotto, as they referred with some more to the reduction of Reverend J.H. S.J., for lessons on ascetics and spiritual renewal. Reluctantly and maybe out of respect for the age and the wisdom of Father G. Height, other companions and many visitors of Epicurean minds made a courtesy call to him. But while with him, their minds were already set on the next parish. There overflowed laughter and enjoyments. A place much longed for its delight and always overcrowded with guests who needed an invitation to leave, for they often outstay their welcome. The guests were unanimously happy to enjoy the beauty of the old missionary flowers collection. But none was yet ushered in library where interesting facts were emerging about the making of Book of God. Not a single cat could be seen around the presbytery, though some were roaming about in the area. The pet in the house was a big dog, not an Irish wolfhound as most Irish households. His pet was one mighty German shepherd, all too voracious and greedy, the opposite of his austere master. The old missionary could have gotten for himself an Irish wolfhound from his home country. For the Irish, a wolfhound was a symbol of loyalty and companionship. Such pursuit for him would have been a negative testimony unto his parishioners. He did not indulge in frivolities for the sake of the kingdom of God. Having an Irish wolfhound in such part of the world, an area rarely mentioned out by the worldly press, might have proved itself a luxury too costly, which Reverend J.H.S.J. forewent for the greater glory of God. According to the rules of the noble founder governing the company of Jesus, each and every companion is allowed to express his abilities, to channel positively his passions in order to fully recreate the world for the greater glory of God. Another passion of the man of God apart from playing his harp was growing various flowers. He had a magnificent garden with all kinds of roses and a greenhouse with mushrooms of irresistible flavored taste. At this particular time of the story, it will be interesting to have a visit in the palace of this modern-day patriarch who happened to be beardless. Compared to the resting den of the Son of Man who had no place to lay his head, it was a royal palace. Apart from the word processor, there was a world radio in that palace to get distant information from around the world. The area was composed of a library filled up with book materials, a modern kitchen, one simple living room aesthetically furnished without a television set, 2 rooms, one room for his private use and the other room set for his guests. That could accommodate only a guest at a time. 3 rooms separated from the main building were available, one for the parish boy, a garage for the car and a space arranged for the pet of the house. The nearest parish was peculiar with its talkative parrot known for its ability to make vocally the sign of the cross. This unusual palace, without a parrot, planted in the middle of the rural area had some decorations of notable interest. A visitor is welcomed by 2 paintings of the gentleman founder and few pictures of many reputed companions of glorious memory. These arty handworks from some unknown artist are siding closely the engraved pictures of the Divine Companion and that of Our Lady of Guadalupe, His Holy Mother. To this solemn atmosphere we add a Romanized Druid-like Celtic crucifix by some Gaelic artist, all hanging on the walls. The striking element in these pictures is the conspicuous absence of a notable picture of Reverend J.H.S.J. His lack of attraction to his own pictures is a mystery to many. A mystery he will take probably with him to the grave. Good to see, there was no underground accommodation whatsoever. The only thing underground was the modern toilets for the use of the permanent usual occupier or any temporary guest of the place. Not many people had standard toilets and it is disputable the claim that one could stumble on an interesting toilet in the whole area at the time while Reverend J.H.S.J. was the main pastor. A sectarian group, many defenders of faith will not hesitate to send to gallows ad vitam, claim to have discovered an underground setting at some unusual location. Such people, whom I will only gladly give out to the Grand Inquisitor of the faith to burn at the stake for heresy and call by their actual names of conspiracy theorists, are just unique. They are all pirates of the minds. But not all pirates of the minds are conspiracy theorists. Of all people, only a pirate of the mind could elegantly walk away as a master of fallacies wearing a robe of an expert in cosmetic logic. What mattered more for a pirate of the mind is not popular approval of his behavior but to see whether his behavior matched the approval of his intellect, period. With dazzling arguments of deep logic packaged in eloquence, they framed it out arrogantly that there exists an elaborate underground golf course hidden under the Papal States. According to the same source, people like the notorious mafia boss, Al Capone and many high-profile propaganda due members regularly met to play golf secretly with the Holy Father. The number of these people is said to be 12 with the Pope and not beyond 13 if one is not reluctant to mention the presence of the devil. Such criminal gatherings by those villains shockingly, they included the Pope among the villains were possible for one reason. They found it necessary to follow up with the fact that the devil was the grand patron of the said gatherings. The great Belial, a majestic golfer, so they said, sometimes partook in the golfing race. In case you are still sleeping, just get informed that the devil always wins the golfing race. And to give the devil his due, they claimed thereafter such gatherings, black masses were celebrated. And during such black masses blood from aborted infants and that of former popes were used as wine. If some listening ears readily availed themselves, these ardent despicable whistleblowers will simply contend that the people absent on the said papal guest list were among others, the bloody figure Jack the Ripper and King Dracus, the forefather of the Count Dracula, Prince of the Vampires. Interestingly, they remained silent on the whereabouts of Jack the Ripper. The former, I am sure if he met up with one of them will be most happily disposed to rip him off without any affected remorse. King Dracus, grippingly, they might posit which they did not, and I am quite surprised by such caution, was pretty busy with drinking blood from the Holy Grail somewhere in a location devoid with consecrated crucifix in the Vatican caves. The very thought that the Pope could be consorting with such evil a guild is absolute madness, if not simply outrageous. These bungled sets of revelations could only be classified as a malicious gossip. The purpose of their campaign of assassination is to smear the image of the sovereign pontiff of the Church of God. No other word will better do justice to the Pope's reputation of integrity. What was the missing detail from such pirates of the mind to back up their wavering allegations? A man-made ready handout of a shady volume of group photographs as original proofs. Likewise, they will not miss any circumstance to have such details if an opportunity happen to avail itself. Here is another troubling fact, not so troubling if you're not a moron. The conspiracy theorists are found partly within the 10% of the leftists. They actually emerged elegantly above the average stupid people. And this world is made up of more than 90% of stupid people, a fact largely supported by Lord Bide. The pirates of the mind, people of some use, if one does not downplay their influence in society. For they keep the smart and to the right thinkers watchful and busy. Not unaware of their power, these people exploit at will that facility with some royal arrogance. The success of such set of pirates of the mind is explained through the fact that many people hate using their brains. What the hell are they doing with their heads? This question for them is irrelevant and worthless. It will not, however, be of little interest to know by which magical device those notorious scoundrels with the Pope, a number of them are most wanted for the worst imaginable acts of felony, could amply play golf on some underground location at the Papal States with the papal blessings with the Pope. How did they reach there? Perhaps not by plane or submarine. It remains a mystery. For many advised church analysts of good reputation, may they be either the UN Romanized, the Dominicans, the Franciscans or the Knights Companions of the Lord, the converging conclusion is the same: outright constructed lies and unholy rubbish. These people of goodwill, by a factual gesture of fraternal bond, joined in chorus to say that this cannot but be a work of the Antichrist. It is clear unless you think otherwise, and then feel free to think so, that such an allegation could only be the fruit of a fertile inspiration from some disgruntled minds. Nothing good could come out of a club of such dishonest people. They remained hapless experts in the art of half-truths. To top up their evil agenda, no notable moral achievement could be put on their records. Maybe there is one. The pregnant fact is that they are just more than excellent at the devil's worship. And in line with their crafty minds, those apostles of the contemptuous Baal might try to fool the average dummy with a lurid tape considered to be a compendium of proofs of their sensational discovery about the assumed Vatican's illegal network of some entertainment business noxious and unholy in its nature and purpose. For any criticism fired against the Bishop Urbi et Orbi, there has always been almost a corresponding poisoned arrow thrown against the Black Pope. One such criticism was that the companions of Jesus were involved in an elaborate scientific brainwashing. Whose brains have been washed? Unless the fellow is a smart moron, why should somebody allow his being brainwashed? This is total thrash. These are the folks who open a bottle of Coke with their teeth and expect to find some Guinness drink in their glass. Blindly or not, many strongly believed explosive secrets are hidden somewhere, probably not in the Sanhedrin from the rest of the world. Where are they hidden? I asked. In the church, they claimed. By whom and why? I asked. The answer is. These are some interesting questions. I doubt people can ably answer them. All such claims are most intriguing and need a close scrutiny. One such alleged secret is that the Black Pope takes the vow of silence. What is the meaning of this vow? So far and according to my well-run knowledge, the Jesuits are not monks of the strict observance. Arguably, they posited, the Father General of the Society of Jesus is formally forbidden to reveal some secrets related to sacred rituals. Furthermore, he is, under penalty of excommunication lati sententiae, not authorized to issue some sentences. These sentences, according to their suggested views, are featured on a hidden blacklist of interdicts. Who is behind that blacklist and for what purposes? Anybody who is not a sleepwalker knows the answer to these spiritual interrogations. Not content with their early allegations, they ended up by saying there is a global and hidden scheme masterminded by the Jesuits to set up a new world order borderless and accountable to none other than the Black Pope. In that wide scheme engineered by the Jesuits, the Pope is a low-ranking subject, a puppet of the Black Pope, or he is simply nowhere to be found in the chain of command of the greedy plotters. They advocate along the same line that the world is running an imminent risk of being under the yoke of the companions of Jesus. The more preposterous part of this claim is that the said global plot is unknown to God. O God, arise and proclaim thy greatness. What are the motives for people in doing things, embracing a vocation? This is an interesting question, especially for people who have taken the vows of religion. This is because there are people to whom their fellows look for moral incentive and religious sense of belonging. If among those who are in religion, there are people of well-to-do backdrop, others came from humble background. Each brought into religion his background, noble and commoner alike. Among the apostles of Jesus, such diversified origin was eye-catching uneducated fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, and who else? Some notorious people like Judas Iscariot, the scoundrel and greedy man who, unaware of the monstrosity of his act, unwittingly sold his soul for 30 pieces of silver. But there are people less woeful who are interested in the job of leading and directing souls, a quite challenging venture. Taking such an assignment is no small talk. In fact, it is not a job, rather a holistic spiritual project of life, a God-given vocation. For any given job one expects many incentives, a smart parcel made up of a good pay and a fair share of enjoyment, but a vocation is all work and no pay or a modest pay. For the one who dedicates his or her life to work for God, the promised pay, if there is any certitude about it, is an eternal seat in the kingdom of God. At the arrival of the delegation, the venerable parish priest was not afar. He was interacting under a shade with a visitor who arrived 2 hours ago. The man seemed not a stranger to the pastor of Jesuit. They were in a discussion that seemed of great importance to human genre. Luckily, the overflow of joy expressed by the sisters happened away from the observing eyes of the rural companion. The one most embarrassed by the hugging was Joe Parkson before his friend. This sudden outburst of emotion had taken him aback. It would however be inaccurate to state that such overflowing of feminine enthusiasm left the pleasant parishioner of Jesuit placid. Joseph Darty went over to the priest with his happy delegation. They were followed from afar by a crowd of colorful people who were almost enthusiastic spectators of the free show. "Please, dear father, this is Joe Parkson." And the 3 musketeers, jokingly added the old priest. "Hi, father," said John Moore. And his sisters, the master of ceremonies put across with ado. Brenda Lucia Esmeralda and Maria Corazon Dolores and "My name is John Moore." "Young ladies, you have racked up all the available names in the supermarket or what?" This funny remark made all the people in attendance to laugh heartedly. "Good afternoon, father. This is a nice place to stay," continued the witty fellow. "Indeed, it is. Hopefully it shall remain that nice." "You are welcome," added gently the old priest. Reverend J.H. S.J., who was up against frivolities, gave a canonical eye inspection to make sure the ladies were not out of fashion. He was most distressed with the incoming dress code. He was in great pain before people who dressed for fashion's sake and displayed their moral vacuum. This is the mark of the complete shallowness of their being. Joe Parkson, the leader of the delegation, was in a white t-shirt under a blue cap and boxers over a silky pullover. His dark eyes were hidden under some unsophisticated sunglasses. On his side, John Moore in his attire looked like the Mexican premier and was happily carrying with wits his 13 years. All these people were the guests at the table of Reverend J.H. S.J. The dining hall was small, it could have room for at most 4 people. It was devised therefore that each will pick up his plate and then go have a seat in sitting room where it will be more relaxing, for both places were looking ajar and connected by a night glance. There were vegetables and Irish potatoes, some garden egg stew and a roasted chicken, all accompanied by fresh drink. It was a miracle to get fresh drink in Xutli even on occasions of feasts. In fact, a good prayer and the blessing of the meal were the entrance menu. Joe Darty, who was not foreign to this type of meal with the patriarch, was part of the crew like a protective angel of the Lord. His presence was stimulating for the 2 sisters. But due to the stern composure of Reverend J.H.S.J., these fairies try to be wise.